Welcome. All right, we're going to talk about Clone Wars. This is our annual review of Clone Wars, and I'm fortunate enough to have Mr. John Cervino with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I know. This is we talked about having you as a guest for a while now.
That's true.
All right, well, before we get into all the muckety-muck, Season 4 is over.
Yep.
What's your overall thoughts before we get into the breakdown?
Well, you know I'm a loyal viewer. My boys and I love the show. I would say, like the other 3 seasons, this is a mixed bag. There's some things that I loved and some things that I was just like, what?
Yeah. I say this very cautiously because, like you, I watch it with my 2 sons, and it's a Saturday morning ritual to come down and fire up the DVR and
Absolutely.
watch it. I think this is the season that jumped the shark.
Oh.
I know I said the last review that this was going to be the last and final season of Clone Wars, and I don't think that's going to be the case at this point. I think we will have a Season 5, but we can get into that in a little bit. So let's get things started, and we'll go from there. You're listening to Digging Star Wars, your online journal of the films that inspired George Lucas to create the Star Wars saga. And I'm your host, Chris Mich, and I am fortunate enough to have as my guest Mr. John Cervino, who is a professional television editor and winner of the prestigious OMNI Award for his editing on the documentary Where's Bolivia, and also a huge Clone Wars fan. So thank you again, John, for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me here.
All right. I figured now that we've got the fact that this season was not what we both wanted it to be, we could go through and talk about some of the more memorable episodes and ones we wish we could forget, and just go through it piece by piece. So you have the luxury of being near the laptop. Why don't you start us off?
All right. Well, the show started with, or the season started with I guess a double shot, if you will, of water-themed episodes. We had Water War and Gungan Attack.
Right, and these were with the prince on Mon Calamari, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Right. I thought this was an interesting start to the season, and you know the key to these episodes was Captain Akbar.
That's right. That's right.
Having him,
not yet an admiral.
Yeah. I thought that, and Admiral Akbar. A lot of people like this guy. He is one of my all-time favorite characters. I actually. When I travel on the road, I have a little Admiral Akbar keychain attached to my suitcase, and I love him, and as many people do. So it was interesting to play with his character, for them to play with his character in this, but I really didn't care a lot about the conflict in this, and I'm curious, because you watched the hand-drawn Clone Wars series.
Yes, I did, yep.
And they kind of touched upon this Quarren Mon Cala conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost felt like I was watching a rerun, but it was in better animation.
Right. I sort of agree with you. Those animated ones didn't have a lot of explanation behind the episodes, though. From my memory, it was more like, hey, here's Kit Fisto in action
and smiling,
and so there wasn't a lot of story attached to those to the hand drawn animated ones, to my memory.
Yeah. I think credit to the new Clone Wars series, that fact that they have these ongoing narratives. I think they were well done, and I liked a lot of the gags. My favorite part is when they are going up to the surface to go to their ship, and the shark dude presses the button and blows up the ship, and they actually have to hold on to the parts of the ship to go back down. I thought that was pretty cool.
It was very clever. It was a great device. I wondered. I know that you're a big Jar Jar Binks fan, according opposite of most of the world, I suppose.
And then the hate mail starts.
But I wondered what you thought of the role that he played late in the episode where he had to spit the Gungan magic spit on the helmet of Amidala.
It was a device. It was good. I actually like the fact that when Yoda contacts the Naboo Council, the Gungan Council, and they're like, well, we used to think about this long time. And Jar Jar stands up, we thinking now. I thought that's kind of good because it mirrors his course of action in Episode 3, where he says we should give extreme powers to Palpatine. So he's kind of sets up that he wants to be a leader, and even though he's an idiot, he thinks he's doing the right move. And in this case, it obviously was the right move, but for Clone Wars.
One more comment I remember you making. What was the shark guy? And you said he looked like a toy from the 80s.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he looked designed to be in a Happy Meal. Like, and I don't get me wrong, I think it was cool, and I love the fact that with his character, they did a lot of Jaws references.
Yeah.
With the music.
And the music. My boys picked up on that right away.
And with the gunshot and how he met his final demise and all that. I thought that was cool. I mean, the absolute coolest part of that underwater stuff is, and I'm hoping it's in the beginning of the season, not the end of last, was the explanation of Admiral Akbar's stick that he has. Because they give him the stick, and I don't know if the prince has it or use it, but you see it's a weapon. It's like a blaster that Amon Kala can activate. And the reason that's, to me, the coolest part is I had that action figure, and I had that stupid stick, which you did not see in Return of the Jedi. And you're wondering, where did this thing come from, and what about... And I know the Clone Wars guys, as geeky as they are, said, well, we can have an opportunity to explain what that stupid thing that came with the action figure is. Let's do it. And that was kind of neat. But to justify 60 minutes of television for that prop is asking a lot. But so we did that, and then where did they go from there? What was the next?
All right, next episode's called Shadow Warrior, where Jar Jar Binks has to assume the identity of a warrior, of the leader of the Gungans.
Yeah,
don't really remember.
Yeah, it's forgettable.
So as we said, it's a mixed bag. Maybe that was a low point. I'm not.
Yeah, they used a lot of the clips from those episodes for the IDs during the season, but and they were interesting, but they weren't my favorites.
So then we have a two-part episode, Mercy Mission and Nomad Droids, which centered around R2-D2 and C-3PO on an adventure.
Now, these are tricky episodes to talk about, and I know you have some notes that you want to get to with these. But right off the bat, what I thought was interesting about these kind of read like the old Marvel comics where you'd have a lot of, like, particularly between Empire and Jedi, a lot of the Marvel comics back in the day dealt with them looking for Han, but occasionally they didn't know what to do. So they would do an R2-D2 C-3PO centered story that really did not impact the galaxy or the war. It was just, hey, we're going to do something with the droids and fun. And one of them actually had him doing a spacewalk in outer space. So when you get to these two episodes, it kind of impacts the war, but not. They're like these little microcosm worlds that the droids are touching and affecting. And I've said it before, 3PO is my all-time favorite Star Wars character. And I think it's great that they were doing these types of episodes, but the season seemed to lose a lot of steam early on when these episodes aired. And I know the people in my house that watch it, my wife and I and my boys, when they watch these episodes, they were very cautious not to complain too much about them because of my, loyalty to 3PO. But I had to agree with them when they said, Dad, this is kind of lame.
Right. We had very similar discussions in my house. My boys are not probably as critical as maybe yours are, but it was still. I asked them. I said, "What did you think of that?" And they're like, "Oh, it was okay." I guess they like to see the droids in action, but I don't know. It didn't resonate with any of us really. One of the comments I think we talked about was its similarity to some other stories. Like I thought, my first impression was it was very much like Alice in Wonderland. They had to go down a hole, and then through the hole they experienced these giant flowers and crazy psychedelic colored things and strange creatures that lived down the hole. And I forget what was the point of that hole. It was like where the gas for the planet's atmosphere or something was issuing from that.
Yeah, there's some kind of pollution, and it was making. Yeah, I don't even remember. But they had kind of that. It felt a lot like a Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, well, if 3PO and R2 go here, they could discover that the manhole cover needs to be put back on.
Right.
Or if they go there, everyone dies. So, I mean, it was interesting, and I know that my kids mildly enjoyed it, but it wasn't the. That's when I started to get worried about the season. I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
This felt a little weak. But where did they go from there after that? What was the next?
Well, as this season seemed to be, they packaged 4 episodes. They made a feature-length film out of 4 episodes. We have Darkness on Umbara, The General, Plan of Descent, and The Carnage of Krell. And those were all packaged into something you called, what, the Krell
opus
experience.
I was gonna say it just seemed to go on. I mean, I liked the idea that they were playing with the clones challenging Jedi leadership, and it was interesting to see a Jedi kind of off their rocker, but talk about a huge gap of disbelief that you had to jump across. I got to a point where it's like, how is this guy still considered a Jedi and walking around?
Exactly. That was going to be my comment. Was from the start, I thought this guy is not behaving like a Jedi. There's something weird about this, and it turns out that he was only in it for his own nefarious purposes. Trying to wrest power to himself.
Right.
But the whole time, I appreciated the grittiness of the war that they were presenting. Mm-hmm. There was one scene where a clone trooper pretty much executes a guy, a combatant that was trying to exit his ship, and he pretty much shot the guy point blank.
Right.
And I think we talked that it was strikingly like a Vietnam movie.
Yeah, it felt a lot like Nam, and a little Last Starfighter, I guess, with the design of the ships that they were in, how they had to sit in like these bubbles and they couldn't quite figure out how to do it. I thought the monster design of like the centipedes that were attacking, there were sort of centipede tanks.
Yeah, right.
They were attacking. Like I thought that was cool, and it felt like Star Wars. It felt like it, just really intense. And I think it was interesting because this particular series, although it's not my favorite part of the season, it hinted towards how dark they wanted to go in season 4 and explore the relationship between the clones and the Jedi. A lot of this experience, though, after the droids and with Krell, is where I started to feel in this episode, the Clone Wars are supposed to be about Obi-Wan and Anakin, and obviously the clones, but like the reason the Clone Wars are so romantic and has a huge part of our nostalgia is because those of us who watched the original trilogy, when Obi-Wan utters that, when Alec Guinness utters the Clone Wars and all that to Luke in his hut at Tatooine, we had expectations of wow, he fought alongside Anakin and it was great. And that does happen, and it does happen occasionally in this season, but not nearly enough for me.
I can see your point there, and one thing I would like to point out is it's sort of the way I feel about the Harry Potter movies is Harry Potter seems to be involved in every single important thing that happens for 7 years. And I wondered if the Clone Wars concentrated even more to your liking on Obi-Wan and Anakin, if you would get to the point where you're like, how can they be involved in every critical thing that happens in this war?
Right.
So I kind of think that branching out and showing us, plus it's a really good way of showing us other Jedi and other characters and other monsters that, or that are in the galaxy.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. What did they do after Krell finally was relieved? So
then we have Kidnapped and the Slaves of the Republic.
Right.
Oh, and then Escape from Kadavo, which I guess they all three of them go together too, right? That all has to do with slavers going and pretty much enslaving an entire nation or an entire planet. Zygerian slavers are behind the sudden disappearance of an entire colony of people on the planet Kyros. This is all from Wikipedia, by the way. They have a listing of the episodes.
This was an interesting episode for I thought a lot of different reasons. One reason was I actually, on my iPhone, downloaded a comic from Dark Horse Comics months before this episode, and the comic must have been drafted from an early draft of the script of these episodes. So here I downloaded this comic and watched it, and I shared the comic with my son, who read it on my phone. And we're watching this episode. At one point, my 9-year-old turns to me and he's like, "Oh wait, they're going to go have to deactivate the bombs." Like he knew the whole story because he read the comic, and I'm like, "Oh, you're right." And I don't know how that happened or if that was meant to be, but it kind of sucked some of the fun out of it. Another thing I thought was interesting. This is the first time they put Obi-Wan in that whole martyr messiah place where if he fought back, the people would suffer, the people would die, and that obviously has a lot to do with the finale of the season. But so I thought that was kind of interesting, and I also just liked the design of this planet, and it felt a lot like Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Quest and the Dragon World series. Like it felt like that. And they did a lot of the play on Return of the Jedi with R2 with the lightsabers in that one battle, which I thought was kind of cool. Where he pushes out the lightsabers and goes there. There's a lot going on
One of the comments that I remember thinking, or that I would like to make about it, was that as you say, Kenobi had to be this docile character, and otherwise, by his not fighting back, he was protecting all the people. And I just had a problem with the fact that the Jedi were shown how they can subtly use the Force. They can turn a dice over.
Right.
Qui-Gon Jinn can turn a dice over without being seen and such like that. And I just thought that there might have been a little more that Obi-Wan could have acted proactively by using the Force. I know he had been disarmed, but, maybe not make the whip hurt as much or something.
Yeah, there was a lot of moments where one of us in our house was screaming, "Use the Force!"
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Use the Force,
Yeah, there's only you can do that once in a while, but this season in particular, they really pushed that envelope of like, why aren't they not using the Force?
And if I can just rewind for a second, by the same token, Anakin can bring down an entire giant city by using his in the water.
Yes.
In the water world episode.
But he can't grab his helmet when it's 20 feet away.
Right.
Okay, welcome back. Thanks to Geocentric for lending music for this episode. It's going to be throughout the episode, and always good stuff. So thank you so much for allowing us to use your music. Okay, John, what's the next episode we're going to talk about from the Season 4 of Clone Wars?
So the next thing we haven't spoken about yet is A Friend in Need. It involves a peace conference between Separatists and Republic delegates. And Lux Bonteri reveals that he wants to defect to the Republic because his mother was killed by the Separatists.
Some interesting stuff there, and it's nice that they kind of explore this thing with Ahsoka. And they teased this with Death Watch being involved.
Right.
And it was very interesting that Death Watch was involved. And I thought the chase sequences were great and the battles were great. And quite frankly, this was sort of a wake-up episode for me in the season. I felt like the season had kind of slowly sloped off. And this was something that was a little interesting.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt teasing with Death Watch is a good idea because they look really cool when they come zooming in on their jetpacks and stuff.
Yeah, but that's that said, and I like Death Watch and all, but putting a woman in a Boba Fett suit, there's some things that shouldn't be sexy.
Right.
Okay, that's very disturbing, and I'm sure some people thought that was super cool, but no, it was not. There's two things that don't belong together.
Right.
Together.
Yeah, it's like what should I be looking at here?
Yeah. It was kind of weird, but I do think the episode was great. And I remember really liking the end battle and the speeder chase in this episode. And you had found a more traditional digging Star Wars link in the end scene.
My biggest memory of this episode was the R2 needed to repair these bunch of droids, these bunch of sort of misfit droids, and it reminded me a lot of the scene in Toy Story where the Woody is sitting on, Woody the doll is sitting on the floor, and all the creepy characters were coming out from under Sid's bed to be led in some adventure.
Right. I mean, it's exactly like
that. R2 then proceeds to help these guys out until they're able to solve the issue of the Death Watch folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like that, and it reminded me a lot of, there was a Star Wars audiobook back in the day. I think it was right before Empire Strikes Back, and it was called Droid World, and 3PO and R2 are trapped on this floating space station that this guy created, and he basically is a cyborg, and he rebuilds discarded robots, and it had that feel, and I loved that audiobook as a kid, and I managed to get MP3s and have my sons listen to it, and they like it too, and it's really corny and really dated, and it definitely had that feel.
Yeah.
But again, it was a really good episode in comparison to the flatter episodes early on, but it was what it was.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm just looking ahead, just real briefly. Most of this season seems to have been in a multiple part series, and that was a standalone episode.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So as you say, it must have like you said, it was a wake up and sort of palate cleanser.
Yeah, right. Like this, let's start fresh.
Yeah.
What's next?
So then we start yet another multiple-part series called Deception that continues in Friends and Enemies, The Box, and Crisis on Naboo.
Ah, right.
And this involves Obi-Wan changing his appearance to uncover a plot of Dooku's to kidnap the Chancellor.
Yeah, I remember these. Cad Bane comes back.
That's right. Obi-Wan changes his appearance to go under deep cover to break this dude out of jail.
Right, he shaves his head and gets the face tattoo, and all that business. Well, I usually, go off here about these different things. What did you think of this?
I enjoyed the deep cover aspect. It sort of reminded me of kind of like a mob movie, something like that. But I have to say, I'm kind of tired of bounty hunters. Like, the bounty hunters are all over this series, and where you say you'd like to follow Anakin and Obi-Wan in their war exploits. I can't believe that the bounty hunters are so involved in these exploits. And I just wonder if those characters were a little overused.
Yeah, because this isn't the only time you're dealing with the bounty hunters. Like, there's more to come later in the season. I think Cad Bane was a huge success. I know it's my oldest son's favorite Clone Wars character, and this was kind of clever.
Yeah.
But I see your point, and out of the 4 episodes that you just mentioned, I thought The Box was really cool. And again, I feel like a broken record here, but just because it reminds me of an old-time Star Wars comic. That's that could have easily been a standalone issue without pertaining to any storyline.
Yeah.
Them going there. And, I remember when this episode came out and we're talking about it, it's like, wow, it's a lot of work to pick 5 guys.
Yes.
Right. But it was very cool and, very cool looking, and my sons ate it up.
Now, my boys love the, I can't think of his name, the bounty hunter that has the great big round shield.
Yeah, is it Domo, or it's something like that?
I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but
same here, and he reappears later.
Yes,
yeah, in the season.
One of the things I recall about this now is that it was such an elaborate plot between Dooku and the Chancellor, who I thought were working together in this whole sort of fomenting the war. I thought they were in league with each other, and I couldn't figure out why Dooku was going through such trouble to kidnap his presumed ally.
Yeah, the whole thing with them going after Palpatine was interesting, and it was interesting how you saw the things in the box happen on the Crisis in Naboo, like the gas and the energy. Actually, no, they didn't do the poison gas. They did the energy shield,
right,
and all the other ones, but they didn't do anything with poison gas, which I thought was funny.
And it left you wondering, hey, but they prepared for poison gas.
Yeah, where's the freaking gas? But it was interesting. I don't think it should have been 4 episodes. I think that easily could have been 3, maybe 2. But it kind of preempted the episode 3 thing, and you find in a lot of these stories, they're really trying hard to take a story element from one of the 6 films,
right, and
put a twist on it and reuse it. And I think that was the thing with this whole Palpatine abduction. And there's just a lot of issues. I don't think this whole like pushing a button and they look like another person technology.
Oh, that's true too. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool.
A lot of confusion at the end.
Yeah, but is it really Star Wars? Like, that just seems too much, But whatever. Again,
I remembered. Embo is the guy's name.
Embo.
Embo,
yeah. Very.
All right.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No. But, it was one of those things like watching it, like, yeah, I get it. But and it was great that it involved Obi-Wan. I think it was very interesting that they didn't clue in Anakin about the mission.
Right.
In this 4-part series. And
I think that kind of maybe sowed a seed of his distrust of the Jedi.
Again, episode 3.
I don't know if that's what you were going to talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
He sort of held it against Obi-Wan and the whole council, really, for not cluing him in and, started to question his place in the whole Jedi scheme.
And it's perfect that it was Yoda and Mace Windu having those conversations about whether they should include him or not. And I mean, we've talked about this throughout the season. Like, you keep wanting for there to be something where you're like, aha, that's going to be what helps him turn into Darth Vader.
Right.
And they have plenty of opportunities, but I don't think they fully cash in on it. And maybe they're just saving something for later. But
yeah, I mean, maybe taken as a whole, you know, you look at all the various moments and, like you say, maybe they're holding that in the back pocket. And
right.
at some point he'll say, remember this and that and the other thing?
Yeah.
You know, this is why I'm so mad at you now.
Right. Like I just want to see him say something to, whether it be the council or to Obi-Wan, like, how can I trust you guys? You know, at one point,
yeah,
like especially with this particular 4-part series, it would have been a good opportunity for them to do that, but whatever. All in all, I thought it was an interesting story, but a lot of little hang-ups.
And you know what, Chris, one more thing to that point of you of saying there are moments when you can say, hey, that's why he turns into Darth Vader. I think, what do you think of this idea that it kind of makes the movies better in a way to have these fleshing out stories in between, you know, because now I can go back to episode 3 and say, yeah, you know, in the first time I saw this movie, he was really angry for no good reason, or really distrustful for no good reason, and then all, you know, now with these backstories, maybe I'll appreciate those films a little more too.
Yeah, you know, absolutely, and if it does that, that's great. And you know, again, this kind of goes full circle. The whole reason we're interested in Clone Wars was because of what Alec Guinness uttered on screen in episode 4.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if it adds value to it, it's great. And you know, I remember explaining why Grievous coughs based on the original Clone Wars series with the battle with Mace Windu. So,
right.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's I think that's certainly cromulent, to use a Simpsons word. All right, what's next?
Okay, so now I know some of your favorite characters are making a comeback in the next 2 episodes, Massacre and Bounty. Massacre involves Count Dooku seeking revenge against Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters for their betrayal with, or what he sees as a betrayal with
Savage Press?
Savage Press, right. And so he decides he's going to massacre the whole bunch of them, the whole lot of them.
Right.
And so Mother
That's
Talzin,
the zombie episode.
The zombie, right. The
right.
zombies from the pods.
Yeah, okay.
The past, I guess they're past witches of Night Sisters. And
yes, of course.
they store their dead in sacks of some kind. And so Mother Talzin, in order to get an army built, hurriedly... she seeks the help of some other old witch in the mountain.
The old witch in the mountain. I'm going to go talk to this old person, which we've never mentioned before, who lives in a rock, and we're going to bring her out, and she's going to bring the undead to help us beat these robots.
Now, I suspect that you just don't like these Night Sisters from the start.
Yeah.
You weren't a fan of them.
I appreciate the fact that they took the design of the original Sith Apprentice from Episode 1, one of the throwaway designs for the head witch.
Okay.
My love stops there.
Okay.
I remember getting the planetary guide to the Star Wars galaxy about a year and a half or 2 years ago, prior to the whole, I forget the name of their planet. Is it
Dathomir.
And reading about it, I'm like, oh, this sounds really cool. And the book kind of came out prior to the episode, so it teased what Clone Wars, where they were going to go. And it sounded neat on paper. Mm-hmm. And then when you got into it, it just seemed extremely too dark and extremely too witchcrafty and really not Star Wars. Like, I just didn't see this living in Star Wars. Now, I know Star Wars has entered the realm of horror with expanded universe novels and stuff like that. And that's great. And I know there's certain fans that really enjoy that. I don't. Right. And but this particular episode of Massacre is what I was referencing at the beginning of this podcast as this is the jumping the shark. Because when you get to this episode and Dooku says to Grievous, wipe them out, all of them. Again, you know, stealing another line from another Star Wars movie. And Grievous amasses a gajillion robots and landing ships and all this stuff. And there's 12 of these witches, right? Yeah. Like, how many of them are there? Like,
well, we don't
not counting the undead.
I know, we don't see that many of them, but I presume there's more than 12, but you might be right.
Go to that planet, go to wipe them out, and then the whole, I'm gonna go talk to the evil person in the rock, and then
Yeah.
they bring the undead. Like it just got to the point where it's like, I couldn't deal with it anymore, and it's certainly something I didn't want to share with my two sons. I just think it was too dark and too creepy, and it's got a Y7 rating. Like I thought that was a little much for a Y7
I
rating.
can see your point there too.
You know, but if someone says to Grievous, take as many troops as you can and obliterate this planet, and you go with everything you got, and you go to obliterate them, and then they pull the undead out, like you gotta be kidding me. And the cherry on top, which I said last year when I reviewed the Clone Wars first 3 seasons of the movie with Josh Tabak. So now it's like they gotta kill off Ventress or Ahsoka. And after all that, who's the one person that survives?
I have really sparked a rave here.
Ventress. Ventress survives. And after all that, I was like, they just have too many bad guys. I've said it before. What happened to? There's only 2, a master and an apprentice. You've got Dooku, you've got Grievous, you've got Palpatine, you've got the bounty hunters, you've got Asaaj Ventress, you've got these witches, you've got Savage Press, and now we got Spider Darth Maul. It's
Yeah.
like, when does it end? You know, like the first original trilogy, you had Darth Vader, Stormtroopers, and bounty hunters.
Right.
And granted, they're a lot, but at the end of the day, Darth Vader was the ultimate bad guy. This is just, you got to be freaking kidding me. And they did not kill Ventress. Like that, there's no reason she should be around.
Well, that leads us maybe to the next thing.
No, I want your impression because I know.
All right. Well, here's 2 things. One thing about the Night Sisters is that I find that your lack of acceptance of their what you call witchcraft as just another way of using the Force. You know that the Jedi do nothing but manipulate the Force, and I think the Night Sisters. I could argue. I think that the Night Sisters are just manipulating the Force in the way that they conjure things or bring things back from the dead. And I think the whole. I do agree with you that those particular episodes were a little dark, and my sons were getting my younger son was actually a little scared watching the undead,
of course,
witches come back. So yes, I do agree with you there, but we've talked about the Night Sisters before, and I just don't have as big a problem with them as you do, it seems.
Yeah. Well,
the other thing was I always thought, especially with the 2D, the hand-drawn animations, that Ventress looked more like a vampire to me. Now, I know you don't want to go into the vampire realm. But you have problems
more
with
undead
witches.
stuff. Great.
But even her super speed and everything seemed in those 2D in the animated series. I thought she resembled a vampire more than anything, even a Nosferatu type vampire.
She actually reminds me of one of the bass player in Bowie's last band, David Bowie's last touring band. But the thing about the witches and like you have the Jedi and you have the Sith, and then there are Force users, and ever since the West End Games role-playing game from 1986 and expanded universe novels back in the mid to late 80s, you realize there were people that use the Force that are not aligned with the Jedi or Sith. They just have Force abilities. So, yeah, it's always been a part of Star Wars, or it's been a part of Star Wars at least since the end of Jedi, Return of the Jedi. So, yeah, it's there, but there's a reason that we have the Sith, and there's a reason we have the Jedi, and it makes it very clear. And it is obvious that with the prequels, Lucas was exploring more of the gray area of war versus the original trilogy where things were black and white. They were more mythic and stoic and whatever, they very binary. The prequels are about, like Episode 3, The Crawl Begins, there are heroes on both sides. Yeah. And I remember Peter Fay, one of our former guests, he really had a problem with that line. And but I said that's kind of where we're at with the prequels, is that they're blending. There's a lot of blending going on, and I understand that there's Force users, but it's almost like they're trying to create bad guys, and we have the Sith, and that it doesn't have to be simply Dooku and Palpatine, but at the end of the day, you got that, and you got Grievous. Grievous already complicates things. So
well, one more cynical comment on that is that's also a way to sell a lot more characters and a lot more collectibles, I guess.
Yeah,
Part of the marketing, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, but this episode in particular was the first time I was watching a Clone Wars episode where I put it on fast forward to get through it and just to get to the end.
So you give this episode a F?
Yeah.
You think it's a failure?
I think this episode is you will look back on this Clone Wars animated series and this particular episode to be like, yeah, that's where they lost people.
Okay.
The funny thing is I think viewership dropped. I don't have any hard numbers to back this up. But I know the people that usually watch this show, viewership dropped this past season early on. I think it was around shortly after the two droid episodes we talked about. I think people just kind of thought it lost its steam. They'd come back, catch an episode or not. And but a lot of people, previous guests, mind you, they're on it. They're just like, whatever. I'll catch up on DVD later. They didn't make it a point to tune in every week. And that's one thing I was impressed with you is that, you were one of the few people I knew that watched every week.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a fault of mine or a quality, but I tend to stay loyal to these shows. Not just Clone Wars, but the shows that I've watched for years. I even once most of my friends or acquaintances have stopped talking about, The Office, for instance. I'm still watching that, and I still enjoy it. So I don't know, like I said, if that's a quality or fault, but I'm going to remain loyal to it, and it's at least fun to talk about. Well, knowing your love of Ventress, you're going to really love the next episode of Bounty, where it seems that Ventress is starting to find some redemption, perhaps. An aimless Ventress joins a team of bounty hunters. Great, my favorites.
Right. It was the best of both worlds.
Right. Under the leadership of a young Boba Fett. And
Embo was in there, right? Wasn't Embo part of that?
No, I don't think
he's seen walking down the street, but he's not part of the group.
Yeah, he wasn't part of this group. These were some new bounty hunters.
Dengar. This was the introduction of Dengar.
Is that the girl with the whip?
No, Dengar
apparatus?
Is the guy with the headdress who was in Empire Strikes Back. He had bandages.
Oh, right, okay.
And he says to Bosk, "Hey, Bosk, who's your girlfriend?"
Yeah.
And "Shut up, Dengar," or whatever he says.
So this is basically a train robbery type thing, or kind of a train robbery with a twist, because they're meant to guard the cargo of the train rather than steal it.
Right.
And then there are some dangerous characters that come up. Oh, so they've introduced ninjas. Remember, they were ninjas on centipedes.
Yeah, as if witches weren't enough.
Right, now they have ninjas.
Now we have ninjas. Yeah, and the robot was cool. The robot, they brought the robot bounty hunter. He had like this disc face, and he could turn his arms 360 and shoot.
Yeah.
I think this particular episode was entertaining and interesting, but the whole time I'm hung up on the Ventress thing. So again, I think it was great that Boba Fett was back, and it was kind of cool Dengar was there.
I have to say I'm a little annoyed by the Boba Fett character as a kid. I suppose you have to fill his story in. But I think he's sort of snotty. I don't know how he gets to lead this group of people.
Yeah.
And he's so easily taken care of by Ventress and shoved in the trunk himself.
Yeah.
So anyway, this was my first thought about this was like, oh, okay, here we're going to start turning Asaaj Ventress into a good guy.
A good guy.
Well, yeah, she went on this bounty hunter trip, but instead of just executing the job and taking her money,
she helped the girl out.
She spun it around and helped the girl out, gave her back to her brother.
Okay.
And stuck Boba Fett in her place. So she got her money. So I guess.
Well, that's interesting to look at it considering the season finale.
Right.
Which is we have two more episodes, correct?
Yep, only two, and they of course they go together because that's the way. So this bounty seems to be, it was a continuation, but not the same story arc, I guess. I don't know how you would say that, but yes, Asaaj Ventress is in it, and the setup was after her planet was destroyed. She's aimless now.
Right.
She's doesn't have anybody to go back to.
Right.
So Bounty takes place. That happens, and next we have a two-part Brothers and Revenge, where we see the return of Darth Maul. Yeah, that was sort of my reaction too. There was a lot of buzz around the trailer where Darth Maul was clearly seen
in fire,
and
yeah, and that was they ran a sneak peek of that prior to episode 1 in 3D.
And I was so hoping that it was just going to be a haunting nightmare of Obi-Wan's or something,
right.
Where he was going to wake up and be, phew, boy, that was realistic. I hope I never run into that guy again, Unfortunately, to my mind, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Well, the first one, you got Asaaj Ventress, and then he visits the witch girl again, and then you get him going on this hunt, and it was pretty intense, because he's Asaaj Ventress,
Yeah.
And, the way he handles, taking over the guy's ship and all that other business. And when they finally come across Darth Maul and he's that robotic spider thing.
Yeah. I'm
This
just
is
what is going on here?
Like, I appreciate that they were trying to bring this character back because let's face it, everyone, a lot of the critiques that go with episode 1, besides Jar Jar, is that like, why did you create this incredible badass Sith only to kill him off?
Right.
And I understand the appeal of Darth Maul. I understand why kids liked him, and yeah, I understand why if there's a way to bring him back. But it is so hard to believe this guy cut in half on Naboo winds up on a trash planet a gajillion light years away,
clear across the galaxy.
Yeah, it turned into a spider. And I was trying really hard to sit back and like this.
And how was he turned into the spider, and who did it, and why would they bother?
I'm just connecting dots here, but I'm assuming that the robotic nomad people that are on this trash planet found him and tinkered with him. But they're the same people that are apparently massacred by him. There's a lot of blanks, and I understand they don't have to spell out everything, but it was a really long way to go to get this character back. And again, because of the previous episode with Ventress living, and that whole stupidity, I was already like, all right, whatever. I got to ride. I got to do the podcast.
I'm one away. I got to finish.
I got to finish this season, so I can talk with John at the podcast. So it just was. It was weak.
Yeah,
it was weak. And that puts us to the final episode, right?
Right. So the final episode is called Revenge, and then now Savage has found his long-lost brother, Darth Maul, and fueled by hatred, Darth Maul has survived, seemingly with the one purpose was to get revenge on Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
And so Savage says, okay, let's go get your revenge. And they quickly somehow go find Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, that was convenient.
And... So
to be fair, okay. They go to Felucia, they massacre innocent people.
Ah, true, right? That's right. Because Darth says, "Oh, nothing will bring the Jedi like the slaughter of the innocent."
Right, and then Obi-Wan's put in a position where he needs to go. He needs to go by himself. It's
and everybody's feeling a terrible disturbance in the Force.
Right. So the thing I liked about it was this is the second time this season where Obi-Wan was put in a position where he needed to be this martyr/messiah figure, where he was called to action, but if he did anything different, more innocent people would die.
Right.
Just like when they were on the slaver planet earlier in the season.
At least this time he got to fight.
Yeah, and quite honestly, the second half of the final episode with Obi-Wan battling Maul and Maul and Oppress just beating the crap out of him, and then Ventress comes in, and there's a little banter in the fight. I thought there were some really great one-liners with Obi-Wan, and I thought the fights were okay. I mean, we're sort of getting spoiled with all the lightsaber fights we've seen in this ongoing series, so it's kind of tough to think how they could reinvent this. My complaint is, I understand doing a cliffhanger, but seriously, not one of those people could have been killed. Like
Ventress?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I mean, I already know they're never going to kill Ventress because now they've made her the cool bounty hunter.
Evidently not.
Yeah, they're never going to kill her. But I thought, well, what's going to be interesting is either Maul's going to be finally dealt with and Savage, they'll pump him up, or vice versa. And I thought Maul looked cool once he lost the spider legs.
Yeah, same here. And in doing a little bit of research here, I saw some speculation that people are hoping that he gets his robes back. Because remember in episode 1, he had his long, cool-looking robe.
Yeah.
They're hoping that they can. One person said, "I hope they cover up his robot chicken legs with his cool robes."
I don't know how to express how disappointed I am in how this season ended.
And I knew as soon as I saw the episode, as cool as I thought it was, that Ventress. See, I think Ventress is cool. I think she has a striking appearance. I like her lightsabers. I like the way she uses her lightsabers. I think she's pretty cool, and my boys think she's pretty cool. When they play with their Lego figurines, their Ventress is the most sought after one.
Okay.
So anyway, we watching the end of this, and I said, Mr. Mitch is not going to like this because Ventress has completed at least a tenuous redemption. You know, now she's fighting alongside the Jedi, at least insofar as to defeat Savage Opress and Darth Maul.
There's just so much about her that, like, even her becoming a bounty hunter, like it's sort of the story with Aura Singh. Like, Aura Singh's backstory was that, at least in the comics and some of the Dark Horse comics, was that she has some Force abilities and lightsaber training. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she was a scorned Padawan or whatever, but so Asaaj being that, it's like, it's more the same. Yeah. And I'm not denying that there's probably appeal to her character. She always seems to make her way into a Happy Meal toy, but it's just I guess the big thing was the goofiness of Darth Maul being a spider cyborg.
Yeah, that really. And I don't know if I was one of the few, but I did not want to see him come back. I do think he's a really cool character, but I thought anything that they did was going to be too much of a stretch.
Yeah, agreed. I never really got to ask you as we were going through this. We were talking more about the storylines and stuff like that. As an editor, do you like the way the show is cut? Do you feel it's any comments on that? Whether it feels like Star Wars or I'll
tell you, that was one of the things that occurred to me the other day was that I almost and this has happened to me a few times during the season. I almost forgot that I was watching a cartoon, an animated thing.
In a good way? You mean that?
Yes, in a very good way. The difference now between, I don't know if they've changed their techniques or if the machinery has just gotten better that they draw and compose these things on. But the difference between the pilot and the way the characters moved in the movie, in the feature film, mm-hmm. and now the way they move now and the way the camera, the virtual cameras work and the way the flight of the ships. I forget which episode it was during this season where the shots from the planet were coming towards towards you as the viewer.
Oh,
and
right.
The ships were also flying towards you on an axis away from the planet, mm-hmm. and I just thought, boy, that looks realistic. It really looked like a real dogfight or a real air battle. And later in the episodes, like that the train robbery one mm-hmm. with the ninjas, I thought, man, those characters are really moving well. And
yeah, the train episode in particular really was cinematic.
And I guess I didn't notice the editing, which everybody says is the mark of good editing, is that you don't notice it.
Yeah.
The action carried well, and like you say, we're spoiled by these awesome lightsaber battles. And so, yes, I guess from a technical standpoint, they are getting better and better.
Okay, well, that's season 4. I'll see what they come up with for season 5. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I'm going to do this next year.
A wrap up of season 5.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I'm over it, but I've heard more and more conversations with one-time fans of the Clone Wars that they're not watching anymore.
Really?
Yeah. But so we'll see. I think once in a while you get a gem of a show.
Yep.
And it's really cool. And then unfortunately there's a lot of dreck. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time and for sticking out watching every episode this season. I don't know many people that have done it other than myself.
Yeah.
So
well, I have enjoyed it, and I think it's really fun to have differing opinions on what's good and bad about the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what being a fan's all about. You should be able to talk about it and discuss it. And I invite anyone listening, if you feel strongly about our conversation today and want to chime in, please do. We are available on YouTube, on Facebook. I do post links to our episodes on Twitter. And we're also now on SoundCloud. So we're out there. And, of course, all these links and content are on our blog, which is diggingstarwars.blogspot.com. And I invite you to comment on the episode. You can comment on our blog. You can comment on YouTube, Facebook, or you can email me at diggingstarwars@gmail.com. And I thank you very much for listening. This has been a really fun season. I think we've come off a long way since season 1, and I hope to come back for season 3. So thank you again for listening, and thank you again, John, for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Digging Star Wars is produced by Mich Media and has no connection to Lucasfilm Limited whatsoever. Copyrights for films, trademark characters, and related materials discussed in Digging Star Wars remain with their respective owners. For a list of references or source material, please send an email to diggingstarwars@gmail.com.